I'm Ashton Addison from the Crypto Coin Show, and today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Tony Edward, founder of Thinking Crypto. Tony, it's great to see you again, and thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Ashton, it's great to be here with you and to talk about the crypto market.
Likewise, I've been a fan of Thinking Crypto and your YouTube channel for many years now. I know you have great insights from all of the founders and execs that you've been interviewing, and there was a lot to talk about in 2024, and there's quite a few narratives going on in 2025 that I feel like we should be honing in on and making sure that we're following as crypto keeps growing. I'm excited to dive into all of that today. I would love to start out with just a little bit on your background. I mentioned you have a YouTube channel, how you got started, what's your focus, and then we can dive into all of the latest topics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started investing in crypto in 2016. A friend of mine told me about it. I remember it vividly. We were at Buffalo Wild Wings, as we usually meet on Fridays or Saturdays. We have beer, we have wings, and we talk about different things. And one of my friends, Sebastian, brought up crypto, and he's like, "Hey, take a look at this thing, Bitcoin, and this new coin that's coming, Ethereum." And I'm like, "What is this garbage? Don't talk to me about this nonsense," right? We all kind of have that view of crypto initially, right? Unless someone sent you some free Bitcoin and you're like, wow, look at my wallet. But, initially when someone brings the concept to you, it's like, what? Right? As human beings, we're just ready to not accept things like that. But what happened is over time, he started making money in the market and he bought things and he bought a car and so forth. And I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention. So then I went down the rabbit hole. I started studying Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then I came across Ripple and XRP. And it really clicked for me when I understood how blockchains work. And I guess the thing that really helped me to understand it is back in the day, in the early days of the internet, I was downloading files and music on LimeWire and Napster. And the concept was you're pulling bits and pieces of the file from computers distributed globally, and that file is in different computers, right? No one authority essentially had the file. So the concept of blockchain clicked for me then. Oh, it's a distribution of the network with computers distributed globally, and there's no central authority. And Bitcoin, being kind of the strongest network at that point, the most well-known. I read the Bitcoin white paper, and I was hooked. And part of it was I was always into technology, so I gravitated to it. But once I understood what was happening here, that this is the solution for us to move value and money over the internet, very similar to how we move information via email or Zoom or social media, we could communicate. There was nothing to move money that quickly, 24/7, without a bank, without a central authority. And man, I got hooked. I started investing. 2017 was my first bull run. And I decided to start a YouTube channel in September of 2017. And I didn't think it was going to turn into anything. I just wanted to do it for fun. I was passionate about it. And my background's in digital marketing, so that helped me to grow the YouTube channel and podcast. But I was doing it part-time while I had a full-time job, while my daughter was just born. And so it was a bit of a crazy time. But, thankfully it grew as the crypto asset class grew.
Wow, that's awesome, and a good time to be starting a YouTube channel. And although crypto isn't hot every year, there's been two, almost three now, considered last year, bull cycles. We might still be in it right now since you started, and the ups and downs are crazy. Probably like no other industry is comparable. So glad to see you sticking to it, and I'm still following your recent content. And last year, 2024, that story you told at the beginning about you hear Bitcoin and you think, until you realize people start making money. I think a lot of people who aren't techie or weren't into Bitcoin before probably heard about it in 2024. The return on the year for Bitcoin was over 120%. The ETF launch is the most successful ETF of all time in January. That really kicked off a major bull run for Bitcoin throughout Q2, topping out, and then through the summer, and then again heading into the end of the year. It's really the greatest year of all time so far for Bitcoin. What do you think about the key takeaways for 2024 and the success and sort of the imprint that Bitcoin has made on new entrants outside of the tech industry?
Absolutely. 2024 was a pivotal year for this market. And I know the same could be said for almost every bull market cycle, but what happened in 2024 was a paradigm shift. You had Wall Street enter this market with a full force of launching ETFs. And as you mentioned, the best performing ETF in the history of ETFs. Just think about that. There's been gold ETFs, stock ETFs, and this thing is blowing all the records out of the water. It's incredible what took place. And there seems to be this race on Wall Street to grab as much market share in this asset class. They all want it. And they're not only launching ETFs, they're tokenizing. And you have the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock, leading the charge. That should tell you where we're at. We have crossed the chasm. There's no longer, oh, this is a fad, Ashton. This is a scam. It's fake internet money. No, this is a legitimate asset class. And what's also happening is a global race. You're seeing the EU pass crypto regulations. Hong Kong launched their own ETFs. So it seems like we hit the tipping point and everybody's paying attention now. There's no longer a joke. It's no longer, I don't care about this. Don't talk to me about it. No, you need to have exposure to it, because if you have a fiduciary responsibility, you're going to lose your job if you don't have some sort of allocation to Bitcoin and crypto. So 2024 was pivotal, a massive paradigm shift, unlike anything we've seen in the past bull market cycles. And yes, we've had incredible run-ups in 2020 and 2021 and 2017, but when you have all of Wall Street here and then you have the government in parallel looking to get legislation through, guys, I mean, the stars are aligning here for us.
Yeah, definitely. And with those past bull cycles, there was always a few years of sort of boring sideways. People forget about Bitcoin 2018, 19, before it starts going up again. And usually that's after there's a huge return and run up on Bitcoin. And we saw that in 2024 with the 120+% return. However, this time seems a little bit different with institutional interest and the ETF launching. Despite the price running up, it seems like Bitcoin may not be at that blow off top. There might not be we're forgetting about Bitcoin for a few years. What do you think about Bitcoin and the action around it moving into 2025? Will it continue? Will there be a lull? Any thoughts?
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts about this because I see the comments, I see the sentiment on Twitter, and some of the folks who've been around for multiple cycles, they also forget. But for the new people, I'm empathetic, right? I give them a chance to learn and understand what's happening here. First and foremost, when you're looking at markets, whether it is a stock market or Bitcoin or crypto, you got to check your emotions at the door. If you are emotional about the markets, fear and greed, the markets will play with your emotions and get you in a spin cycle. So first, you got to pause and check your emotions. I'm going to look at this market logically and from a reasonable standpoint, and I'm going to look at data. So if we go to the data and we look at the chart, there has been no invalidation of Bitcoin or the crypto market. We are still in a bull market, and I anticipate, based on the analytics and the data, that things will continue to go higher. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be volatility and sharp corrections. I remember my first go around in 2017, we had 30% drops, 40% drops. Those were stomach churning. We're not even seeing anything like that this cycle. We have not seen anything that really brought fear in the market. We're seeing, little bits of it here. People are starting to feel something because of the macro with inflation and so forth. But if you look at the chart, no invalidation. The other aspect is I like to watch what the whales are doing. So I use a platform called Sentiment, and they track what whale wallets, 10 or more Bitcoin. Guess what? The whales are not selling. And the supply in exchanges continues to go down. Historically, what we've seen is when this supply starts moving up on the exchanges, it means these whales are getting ready to sell. None of those indicators have flashed, in addition to the Bitcoin Pi cycle top indicator. So this is the data now. But if you look at the sentiment and you look at the market and the candle, the red candle, your emotions, oh my God, what's happening? Is this the end of it? Oh no, Jerome Powell said he's only going to cut rates 2 times this year, right? The narrative and the news, you got to really put blinders on and just look at data. And don't get me wrong, it took me years to learn that because I was in the same emotional cycle. I was listening to Jim Cramer and financial news until I got financially educated and I started to learn how to read the charts and the on-chain data. And that tells a completely different story. So Ashton, answer your question, Bitcoin, temporary pullback correction, may go a bit lower, maybe he goes and tests 80K. Guess what? Still within the bull market timeline and time frame. And along the way, you have these flush outs and the sentiment resets, and then we keep going.
Yeah, I think that's some great insight, Tony. And it definitely is easy to get caught up on X, looking at, when it's up, everyone's screaming for joy, and then it drops 2%, and all of a sudden the sentiment changes. But it's one thing for whales to see what they say and what they do. And if you're looking at the on-chain analytics like you are, and they're not selling their Bitcoin, then that tells much more of a story than what anybody who could have any Bitcoin, or maybe they don't have any Bitcoin at all, what they're saying on X about where they think it's going to go. But if they haven't sold, then that tells more of a true story. So that's great insight.
Can I add something else? I'll give a little secret I learned. Financial news and even on social media, there are people looking to short the market, the stock market and Bitcoin, and they will post the most bearish information. They'll take the smallest sliver of a timeline of data and say, see, look what's coming, doomsday, Armageddon, right? Now, if you don't know better, and it could be coming, I've seen top traders, top analysts do this, and it's just the narrative they're putting out there to fit their trade. So if they're long, they'll tell you something super bullish. And if they're shorting, they'll tell you something super bearish. So this is where you have to filter it. And you have to look at the data. That's so important. If someone is sharing the actual raw data with no narratives and saying, hey, here's where we're at, here's the macro view, it doesn't look like there's any invalidation, versus saying, oh no, this thing is going out to 20K, it's over, bull markets, right? You got to watch out for the sensationalism.
Definitely. And now with that notion that, okay, Bitcoin's not done in 2025, there, even if it pulls back to 80K, as you mentioned, it's still not invalidated. 2025 looks promising. I'm looking towards major events in what could be a catalyst or what's happening in 2025. It seems like the number one thing of importance in the very near future here is the Trump administration coming in this January here, and then the potential for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, other legislation as well, but that seems to be the number one topic. How do you think that will influence Bitcoin this year?
I don't want to sound too conspiratorial, Ashton, but when I see BlackRock, the world's wealthiest asset manager, which has worked with the US government after 2008 and even in the pandemic, or buying up homes and all these things, and I see them hoarding Bitcoin and putting their clients' money into it, and then all of a sudden the government's following that lead, I think we know what's happening here. We're headed to a Bitcoin standard, and if Wall Street is bought in and they give campaign donations to politicians, the writing's on the wall, we will get a Bitcoin reserve. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen exactly this year. What I think may happen is that Trump and his administration may say, we're just going to hold the 200,000 plus Bitcoin we have in custody and use that as the start of the reserve. But I don't know if the bill goes through for them to buy. Buying that's a tricky one, because it requires a lot of capital from the government. And when you have politics involved, will Democrats stand for that? Will they fight tooth and nail against it? Will some Republicans say, I don't know about this, right, in buying? But simply keeping what they have in custody as a start, I think that happens, and we could see the buying happen the next cycle.
I love that perspective, Tony. And I think I feel like it's very possible, because in politics, they're always playing these games. And of course, they want to accumulate as much Bitcoin as they can at lower prices. And they want to make sure that there's an opportunity to accumulate and not make the announcement, and then the price goes up, and then they have to buy it at the top as well, finding a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's always these games, and they're playing the long-term game. I'm sure BlackRock, Michael Saylor, they're not planning to sell the Bitcoin next year. They probably have a decade investment horizon, or multi-years, much beyond what retails normally expect. I feel like that's the difference between the smaller investors and these big players, is they really look at, like Warren Buffett style, with the Bitcoin in there, that like they're looking years and years and years ahead.
Absolutely. And that's why I always, on my podcast and even on Twitter, I tell people, look at the macro. forget about the hourly, the daily, sometimes the monthly. You got to zoom out because the real money is made in the macro. Don't get me wrong, you can get lucky, hit a meme coin, but for example, and I just use myself as an anecdotal evidence here, but there's coins I bought in 2017 that I still hold, and it's up incredible amounts. And I've made money that I never thought I would be able to make. And I'm being honest with you guys, because I don't come from a rich family. I'm a poor immigrant kid, right? Growing up in New York, I lived in the basement. I talk about this in my book and so forth. And that money that I'm planning to take some profits this cycle, I'm going to help my parents out. I'm not trying to buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. You know, that's usually the meme, right? When Lambo, but I'm trying to eliminate debt, boost up my retirement, help out my parents. Those are my top 3 goals. And I wouldn't have gotten here if I didn't, as they say, hodl and learn the market cycles and understand what's happening with the liquidity cycle. You know, crypto follows the stock market as well, and it all follows global liquidity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love your story, Tony. And I know that altcoins are more risky than Bitcoin. There's certain fundamentals that you'd want to look into and projects you resonate with. As you said, you can get lucky on a meme coin, but there's so many coins that it's hard to cipher through what's good and what's not. However, some of the other blockchains that are in the top 10 or the top 20 are reasonably well established now. Solana, Ripple. I know that you're a fan of some of these other blockchains. I was looking through the Poly market news in 2025. The market is saying there's a 70% chance or more of Solana ETF or a Ripple ETF and other altcoins to also have ETFs into the traditional stock market as well. What are your thoughts on that, and if you think that will play out?
Yeah, great question. So I think because of Trump coming into office in this much more favorable environment, with Gary Gensler resigning on pretty soon, 13 days, right? A more pro-crypto SEC chair, a pro-crypto secretary of the Treasury, a crypto czar in the White House, and so on and so forth. Trump is really positioning a lot of pro-crypto people here. And I think that's going to help open up the door for altcoins, for us to get more ETFs. The challenge is, and I spoke to Commissioner Hester Peirce at the SEC about this, historically, they've relied on having a futures market first before they approve the spot ETF. So I see that being a hurdle. That doesn't mean it can't happen this year. And hopefully the market makers and these people have the futures filing, so to speak, ready for Solana and XRP and the other ETF, HBAR, I think is the other one. And if they're able to get that, we could see a fast track of the spot ETFs around Solana and XRP being pushed through. But there could be a buy the rumor, sell the news event here, meaning that people are thinking this is going to happen. There will be some movements. There will be filings. I don't know if they get approved, because if the SEC continues on the same track that it has for Bitcoin and Ethereum, these things do take time. You have to have they want to see a futures market and all these things in place. However, we could be surprised. Maybe Paul Atkins, the new SEC chair, says, you know what? We don't need the futures market. Just to prove it. That could happen as well. And then what you could see is, in addition to the individual spot ETFs, a basket ETFs. I think the basket ETFs are going to be very successful, because the majority of investors don't necessarily like to go pick individual stocks or crypto. They say, give me exposure to the NASDAQ or the S&P 500. If I give you exposure to the top 10 in the crypto market, that's pretty good. I get everything: Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Doge, right? All of these things. So I think we could. There's a probability of us seeing it this year, but I still see a major hurdle with that futures market.
Yeah, that's a great point about the basket ETFs. You know, I think I haven't seen any discussion around that on X, where most of the crypto people are chatting. But if you look at the traditional markets, that's index funds is so many investors. You know, you go to Investing School 101, they just say index funds. Well, where's the one for crypto? That's naturally going to come.
Absolutely. I know the guys at Bitwise Asset Management are working on something like that. I don't recall. I think Grayscale also filed for something like that, but I don't think they have been approved. That's the challenge, right? And if they have, it's just for Bitcoin and Ethereum. But if you want to get exposure to the other top 8. Well, we've got to exclude, I should say, we've got to exclude Tether and the stable coins. But you know what I mean, right? If you want to get those other altcoins in the top 10, you need the approval. And I think the change of the guard coming up here with the SEC and the Trump administration is going to be really, really, really beneficial for altcoins.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be more pro crypto. I'd be curious to see how it plays out in whether they throw all rules out the window about no futures and let's just go guns a-blazing, or they take steps like what you said about the Bitcoin reserve. Let's start with a little bit. It's more positive, but we're not going full blast here in the first month. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. Another topic that's of pretty hot for when Trump comes in is Doge, with Elon running the Doge and Vivek Ramaswamy as well, and how it's not related to the Doge coin necessarily. There's no actual currency being exchanged in it, but the name is there, and there seems to be a correlation in the market. How do you think that might play out with how Doge actually relates to Dogecoin, and will it affect the price and anything else that might happen with that?
Ashton, sometimes I feel we're living in a simulation, like we're in the Matrix or something. Because Elon, he put this together. There's a reason that acronym is Doge. This guy, I tell you, sometimes it's love him or hate him, right? It's just so funny. But look, I think the market, because we live in a culture now that's driven by the internet, and there's meme culture so strong, right? People send each other memes and so forth. You have that layer, and then you have Elon, who has set the standard with his love for memes and his love for Dogecoin. Then he goes and names a pseudo government agency after Doge. Man, it's kind of like this, how should I put it? This mass psychology thing where it's going to help Dogecoin, even though it shouldn't. It's going to help Dogecoin. It's just the nature of the society we live in with memes and internet culture, honestly. So I think it is going to be beneficial for Dogecoin. I've often stated I'm not a big fan of meme coins, but if I were to invest in a meme coin, it would be Doge, because it's been here for a long time. So it shows it has staying power. It has a developer community. There are literally smart people building and trying to get more applications and utility around Dogecoin. And you have the network effect, which is the meme culture of Doge already being shared as a meme before the coin, and then the coin being associated with the most richest person in the world, and it's in the top 10. So all these things bode well for it. As much as I don't like to promote meme coins, I think it's a safe meme coin to invest in. And I say safe, maybe with a little asterisk. And the chart, look, I can't deny the chart looks bullish as hell.
Yeah. No, it's great insights. And you're right about meme coins that it's hard to sort of value them sometimes. But I think Doge is an exception where there is a blockchain. It does have a network effect. I think it's been around longer than Ethereum. It actually is fast and has cheap transactions. So theoretically, if you wanted to implement Dogecoin, the blockchain, into X payments, for example, it would actually work efficiently. I don't think there's any other meme coin that could do anything close to what Doge could do in actually conducting transactions.
And you know what would be really crazy, Ashton, is if the developers, because Doge is proof of work, they come together and, I don't know, in some way put a hard cap on the supply, because right now the supply is unlimited. Oh my God, that would be game changing. We would see an explosion in the price, because part of what drives these coins to do well, it's a supply and demand economics, right? Like Bitcoin, only 21 million, some gets lost, it's lost forever. And if Dogecoin, those developers and the miners and so forth say, hey, let's fork it or whatever, or change something and hard cap it, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that it's hard to do with Bitcoin. We need 95 or 99% consensus. It might be possible, but if it's in the best interest, of course, having a coin that isn't being inflated is easier to fix than changing Bitcoin, which already has a stable 21 million. I would love to see something like that happen. So let's see how it plays out. Now, Tony, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to talk about one last topic that I think is important, is the narratives in which subsectors of blockchain and crypto are growing. And in 2025, it seems like some of the narratives are coming up, like AI, of course, is continuing to grow, the merging of AI with blockchain. I'm also seeing DePIN, some other narratives as well. What do you think about narratives in blockchain, and is it good to follow along with those trends? And what do you see, if any, narratives moving into 2025?
Yeah, I think it's important to pay attention to the narratives because sometimes you have a lot of capital and liquidity to follow those narratives, specifically if they're coming from like VCs and hedge funds, right? So I think, like you mentioned, AI, DePIN, RWA, huge this cycle. And AI, I think, is the leader in that pack. I'll give an example. I took a bet in, I think it was January 2023 on Fetch.ai and Render. Those have done incredibly well for me. There's others that did well, don't get me wrong. But AI has this, similar to the memes, right? A mass penetration in the psychology of people. You walk down the street and you ask somebody about AI, I guarantee you they can give you their opinion or perspective. It may not be the most sophisticated, but they can say, hey, I'm worried about it, or I think it's cool, it's kind of scary, and so on and so forth. So if you have that mass societal understanding of AI and you present them with opportunities in the stock market, we saw what NVIDIA has been doing, and in the crypto market, people are going to gravitate to it because they go to things they understand. So I think AI will continue to do well. I think these AI coins will surge like crazy, not just because of the crypto market, but just the bigger macro view on AI. And people recognize this is the future. They may be scared of it, but they recognize this is the future. So I think it does really well. And then RWA, I think, does really well because we're seeing a lot of tokenization. BlackRock's tokenizing on Ethereum and other blockchains, Franklin Templeton, you name it. And DePIN also has a strong narrative, but I don't think the majority of crypto investors fully understand DePIN, let alone the regular average Joe and Jane.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like AI is just going to continue to explode. And when there's AI in physical devices, when blockchain connects into those devices and allows them to transact, that's sort of where DePIN comes in, but it's hard to understand and grasp it all. And I know that there's going to be so many, every device that comes out nowadays is a smart device, and eventually they're going to want their own wallets, their own communication channels of AI and transacting. And I don't know if 2025 is the year that all comes to fruition and does a 10x in growth, but it's coming eventually. So I appreciate those insights, Tony. And now, last question, and this is, there's no right answer, but when you're looking at the bullishness of Bitcoin in 2025, if we do top out, or maybe it continues into another 2 years, is there any range of where you see the potential of the price of Bitcoin and where it could go?
Yeah, that's a big question, right? And I'm gonna say what once again, not my feelings, but what I see in the chart, based on past performance and based on all the things we talked about with the favorable environment, with the Trump administration legislation and all these things, right? Bitcoin Reserve. But if you look at the charts, if Bitcoin is to do kind of the same percentage move or same targets it hit with a Fibonacci model on the chart, it could touch 200,000. That doesn't mean it will happen, because past performance is not an indicator of future performance, right? There's no guarantee that we see a carbon copy of that. So let's say I go conservative and I say, I'm not going to say it's going to go to the 3.618. Maybe it goes to the 2.618. That puts us about 150 to 170. I'm safe with saying that, and it may not even touch that, right? It may top out at 140. But talking probabilities here, I'm going to put my biggest bet on 150 to 170. Could we get a super euphoric moment? Maybe that Bitcoin Reserve bill does pass and it takes us to 200. I think it's possible. And once again, I'm not pulling these numbers out of my ass. This is based on chart analysis. And I would love Bitcoin to go to 1 million, right? But we got to be realistic. So I think 150 to 170 is a safe bet.
Yeah, no, that's a great insight, Tony. And I feel like people start throwing out numbers and they forget that at the beginning of 2024, Bitcoin was like 25,000, and then all of a sudden you're like 10x, on the greatest asset of all time in return, but then once it gets to 150, they start calling 400, 500, and the sky's the limit. And if there is a blow off top, that one day go from 170 to 200 back to 170 in the same day. And if that happens, I feel like that will be the top. So it's hard to pinpoint the exact number, but I like that perspective, and throwing a little bit of technicals in there, looking at the Fibonacci, it's better than just guessing out of nowhere. So I like that range. I appreciate your insights, Tony. You have so much great knowledge from all the people you've interviewed, and just being in the market for 7-8 years now. I really do appreciate what you have to say, and I'm going to continue to follow your channel. For those people who haven't checked out your channel or are looking for somewhere to follow your insights more in real time throughout this year, what is the best way to follow along with all the content that you're creating?
Oh, sure. So we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm, of course, on Twitter. So you just search for Thinking Crypto or Thinking Crypto Podcasts. And we have a newsletter as well. So we share a lot of the chart analysis and all the data, right? So I started off by saying, forget about your emotions and feelings, look at the data. So I want you the goal is to educate and help people to go from feelings and emotions to looking at the data and be educated about the markets. So you can find me on all the social platforms. I'm pretty much everywhere. And then if you want to check out my book as well, it has a lot of the information about crypto that you need to know about.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tony. All the best, and let's definitely follow up in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.